our blessing was not to be shared with anyone else. Sure, a little bit, but not the Most High's hand upon us. That was never to be shared with everybody else. No, we were created differently. And that's what holy meant, by the way. To be different, you know, to be indigenous, the indigenous people, you know. And that's who we are, you know. But like everything else, though, we fell off, but now we're coming back. The elect, the 1/3, the 144,000. Shalom, first and foremost, I'd like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash. Still known as the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching the truth and sincerity, and shout out to Yakims out there in the four corners of the earth proclaim this truth. Braka the Yahweh, Braka the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakakadash, Brakatam. So we were always meant to be kings, and yes, the rest of the world, you know, they do get a blessing through us being the kings, but we were always meant to be the kings over the rest of the nations. And yes, they will still be blessed for it, but they will still serve us in the kingdom, and it'll make total sense, you know. And that's what it means when you say the Most High's prayer, right? You know, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thus, the next kingdom to come, which is heaven on earth, which is the Israelites in their true rulership with Yahweh Shai and King David, for that matter. You know, the house of David that we often speak about. It's coming. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. This is what's promised to us. We got to hold that fast. We got to hold. It's the only hope we got.
Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are they which do hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. Blessed are they which are persecuted for righteousness' sake. Blessed is the kingdom of heaven. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
The book of Psalms, chapter 16 and verse 11. It says, God will show me the path of life. So we're on the path of life. The path of life leads to paradise. The path of life leads to glory, which the glory is the kingdom of heaven. And we're on that path of life. We're walking on the path of the tree of life to gain eternal life.
Consider the lilies, how they grow. They toil not, they spin not. And yet I say unto you that Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. If then God so clothed the grass which is today in the field and tomorrow is cast into the oven, how much more will he clothe you, O ye of little faith? And seek not ye what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, neither be ye in doubtful mind. For all these things do the nations of the world seek after, and your Father knoweth that ye have need of these things. But rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things shall be added unto you. Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Sell that ye have, and give alms. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that faileth not, where no thief approacheth, neither moth corrupteth. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
To eternal peace and joy.
And that's what we're doing. Securing our peace. Securing our place in the kingdom. You know, which is determined by the works, right? By the works. The fruit of your labor, which you go out and you teach this truth, right? You know, and putting that above everything else. You know, Because Esau's kingdom is crumbling. As you can see, it's way past being fractured. The fractures came in, quite a while ago. But nonetheless, though, we're seeing the downfall of Esau's kingdom. Because the covering cast has been revealed. It's no longer over us. We now know that plantation Christianity was a lie. And we've relearned everything. We know what the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven actually looks like in that illustration there. So we know that this is definitely not the kingdom. And these Edomites, these so-called white people are not the righteous. In fact, they're the wicked of the Bible. No wonder why you don't see heaven, right? They see heaven. Only the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, right? Even the peasants among the Edomites don't even see that, right? Because only a small little group, the 1%, ever see that, right? Most people work their fucking ass off. And they had slurs for you too. You Edomites, red Hebrew Edomites, they had slurs for you too. You fucking rednecks, right? They don't even respect you. You work your fucking ass off for them and you don't get any benefits whatsoever. Because we're still in slavery till this very fucking day. And that is because our kingdom has not been restored. See, restoration is coming, and that's what we preach about, right? But most of all, though, at the end of Esau's kingdom, he's going to try to usher in his new world order, which is why you see the crisis in place, playing out. Oil prices now determined by Trump's mood. We see this Nero 47. We see this king of Babylon coming in, exalting himself above all that is called the Most High, so he even sits in the place of the Most High, over the stars of the Most High, which are the Israelites. He rules right now, but that's all starting to fracture. It's all starting to come to its end. Crude prices hit their highest level since 2022, following reports that the U.S. president would be briefed on new Iran options. Crude oil prices rise and fall, deepening on whether U.S. President Trump got enough sleep. Slovak Prime Minister Fico said in a sarcastic remark his comments came after oil rose to a 4-year high amid reports that U.S. military would brief Trump on options related to the Iran conflict. So, like everything else though, everything is under pressure, including oil prices, depending on how President Trump wakes up. Fico said on Friday, speaking with journalists, if he wakes up in a good mood, oil goes down. If he wakes up in a bad mood and makes some statement, oil automatically goes up. So it's based upon his temperament. So you see who the king of Babylon is, right? Prices saw extreme volatility and a sharp surge after the U.S. and Israeli state launched a war of terror against Iran on the 28th of February. Iran responded by barring enemy ships from the strait, which handles about 1/5 of the global energy trade. In addition, Tehran conducted retaliatory strikes against U.S. military bases in several countries. So like everything else, though, they got them where it hurts. And that's just it, though. And then you're seeing this shit show going, right? That Pete Hegseth, the fucking douche, is actually being grilled here. But like everything else, though, it's all part of a shit show, right? President Trump ain't going to be impeached. You went through that before, right? In the first term? No, and there's no blah, 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 all together, right? So like everything else, yes, and there is some background on this Alex Jones thing. Because, InfoWars is gone, but he, as you can see from what I read, that he already has, something else. He's back. Because like everything else, you got to have, your paid adversaries, right? Because that's what a Democrat-Republican Party is. It was once called the Democrat-Republican Party. So there's two heads, two horns, like a lamb, but yet speak as a dragon, right? So you got all that going on. So here we go, Hegseth asked to resign by Democrat over 6. These people ain't going to retire, right? Let the shit show continue, right? Hegseth, the fucking douche.
Back here, I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Head wounds, heavy bleeding, and then just shrapnel all over. So folks are bleeding from their abdomen, bleeding from arms, bleeding from legs. Secretary Hegseth, do you know who said that?
I'm not sure I do.
It was one of our soldiers describing the devastating Iranian drone strike at Port Shuaibah, March 1st in Kuwait. As you know, 6 of our soldiers killed, over 30 wounded. Secretary, do you know the range of the Shahed 136 one-way attack drone, approximately?
It depends on the variant, but it's got serious distance.
Several hundred miles. Mm-hmm. Do you know how far Port Shuaibah is from Iran?
There's a reason why we took it's extreme measures for protection. Because
He's only a Fox News correspondent. He knows nothing about military.
Before the war started, there was clear intelligence that Shuaibah was high on Iran's target list. Internal analysis that said the site was indefensible from aerial attack and should not be used. Yet you sent our soldiers from the 103rd Sustainment Command there anyway. Is that true or false? True or false?
True.
Straightforward question.
Are you going to give me a chance to answer, or just play gotcha?
Did you send them there or not?
We took proactive measures from the beginning to ensure force protection and defensive posture were maximized across the theater.
Let's talk about what defenses they had. Prior to the attack, officers on the ground knew our troops were vulnerable. In fact, they requested additional force protection. Did they receive it?
Nope. Oh, worse than Benghazi.
Force protection and counter UAS was always made.
In fact, when asked to describe the base's defense,
Obama never got impeached over Benghazi either.
I mean, I would put it in the none category. From a drone defense capability, none. So let's be clear, no counter-drone capabilities, no counter-rocket systems, no counter-mortar or counter-artillery, not even the basic overhead protection that you and I had 20 years ago in Iraq, and now 6 of our soldiers are dead. The next day, you downplayed the attack. You said it was a squirter that squeaked through fortified defenses. But since then, thankfully, brave survivors have come forward to set the record straight. One of our surviving soldiers told CBS, quote, "Painting a picture that one squeaked through is a falsehood." Another said the unit was, quote, "unprepared to provide any defense for itself. It was not a fortified position." Another survivor said the building's protection was about as weak as one gets. Secretary Hegseth, that is obviously in direct contradiction to what you said from the Pentagon podium the next day. So are you saying that these soldiers, our soldiers, who survived this horrific attack are lying?
What I'm saying is, before the commencement of the conflict, we put in maximum defensive posture. We could.
It's a direct
we moved 70. In this direct, I gotta speak, or are you just gonna monologue falsehoods all over the place?
Fuck you! You're a liar, and you're just a Fox News correspondent.
Reclaiming my time.
Because you yell doesn't make you right. Just because you yell doesn't make you right.
I'm reclaiming my time on behalf of these survivors. You just said what they said is a falsehood.
There's a much larger picture.
True?
There's a much larger picture. Integrated air defenses, bunkers, moving people off the X to ensure that they were not part of the target. We moved those troops and all across the theater, thousands of troops off the X, off of their bases, because we knew what Iran was going to try to strike, but we knew there would be a tragic moment. There would be a tragic moment where something could get through. Of course, that's the consequence of it.
Because you got to sell the war, right? Support the war. War small. Like everything else, though. You know? Deliberately putting them in harm's way to get more grounds for support. You know, oh no, you know, Iran killed our soldiers, so we got to continue to amp up the war. We got to get people to fight on the front lines for the war. Got to support the war. Yeah, that's what it's all about. You know, and it's theater, right? Theater of operations, right? Reminds me of a game called Pacific Theater of Operations. You know, that was, of course, a World War II game, you know, put out by Coe. I would play it quite often because it had nuclear submarines and nuclear aircraft carriers as well, where you could fire nuclear missiles. Because the Third World War will be fought with nuclear missiles. We're just seeing everything leading up to that Third World War. Trump on Hormuz blockade, we're like pirates, and it's very profitable. Of course, he's responding to the fact that they call it an act of piracy. Rare agreement with Iranian officials. President Trump nearly said the U.S. Navy is acting like pirates, which he described as an operation about seizing ship amid the ongoing blockade of Iranian ports. Well, last time he said it was fun. You know, they blew up the school because it was fun. You know, now he's saying, yeah, we're very profitable. It's a profitable business. Not for the people fighting the front lines. Not for the people, you know, that have to mourn the losses, like what you saw in the previous video, right? But very profitable for, you know, yuppie motherfuckers like him who don't give a shit about... See, that's just it. Esau don't even fucking care about his own. The 1% always get rich, and they're the first to send you to die. You will die so that they may live. It's unleashed The dogs of war, an old Pink Floyd song, but yet it's very, very true. Yeah.
And there's no respect. Turn your ship around. Evacuate your engine room.
They die so this general can talk, right? The king of Babylon. He doesn't give a shit about his own. Why should he? He'll never have to serve front lines. Of course, like everything else, though, this won't fucking play. You should never try to do live lessons. But nonetheless, we'll just save from that, Sort of like Pirates No Donnie, the textbook piracy wanted upside an incompetent opponent moments like this. Crowd should declare that the truly disturbing part, U.S. urgently needs a swift and serious regime change. And that's what it's really all about. They're not going to get it, but that's what they want. So like everything else, while, might be getting grilled about the actions and the lack of protection, when Iran's retaliatory strikes came. Hey, just like Venezuela, he's planning to take over Cuba as well. Fucking why not, right? The king of Babylon gets what he wants, because he's at the very end of his kingdom. So, yeah, why not try to get it, And that's just it, at the expense of others, right? At the expense of, what they call worthless eaters. That's what it's all about. Serving them.
Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and as many of you may have heard by now, Trump is saying that he is going to be invading Cuba and taking it over immediately. In fact, you can hear him speak about it for yourself right here.
And he comes from originally a place called Cuba, which we will be taking over almost immediately.
Yep.
Now, Cuba's got problems. We'll finish one first. I'd like to finish the job. On the way back from Iran, we'll have one of our big, maybe the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier, the biggest in the world. We'll have that come in, stop about 100 yards offshore, and they'll say, "Thank you very much, we give up."
So we have Trump here
making jokes.
This is going to happen. We have to finish them first, of course. That means Iran and all these other places that, we've seen the United States attack 10 countries in the last year, and it was only a couple months ago that Trump took over Venezuela. And, they're saying, okay, there's a steady flow of oil now from Venezuela to the United States. It sounds like some big success, but there's so much more to the story than meets the eye, as always, my friends, as always. Because at the end of the day, this is actually more about a takeover by CIA and intelligence agencies like Mossad. And we're going to get into that and more today, my friends. But before we do, I urge people to check those links below. There are Himalayas, and this naval ship leaves Iran, they may take a quick pit stop in Cuba. Fox News provided further quotes from Trump's comments on Cuba. President Donald Trump appeared to joke during remarks at the Forum Club at the Palm Beaches in Florida Friday that the U.S. would be taking over Cuba almost immediately while recognizing attendees, including former Representative Dan Mica. And I quote, and he comes from originally a place called Cuba, as you heard him say, which we will be taking over almost immediately. Now, the president hasn't elaborated further, but we know this has been a plan for quite some time. He's already previously said in February that maybe we'll have a friendly takeover of Cuba. We could very well
rumors of war
takeover of Cuba. Now, it all sounds good and fine. First of all, I think most people that are anti-communist would support the idea of Cuba not being a communist country anymore, obviously, and I think most Cubans would agree with that. Absolutely, no doubt about it. I think the same goes for Venezuela.
But it's going to be worse than communism, right?
On an enemies list in Venezuela about a decade ago, saying that if I entered, I would be imprisoned. Again, that was Maduro himself that signed off on that when I was making viral videos calling them out for their hyperinflation and insane socialist policies. But that does not mean one thing leads immediately to another. The reality is what's happening in Cuba was propped up by the U.S. in the first place. I want to quickly, just a quick history lesson. It's simplified. Obviously, it goes much deeper than this. But Cuba was propped up through a revolution by Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, who weren't even Cuban, after they spent a bunch of time in the United States, mysteriously. Many point to the fact that there was a clear tie to the CIA between Che Guevara and Fidel Castro. And, of course, when Fidel Castro started, breaking out of the realm of what he was and was not allowed to say, he was killed by the CIA, which is open record. I mean, that everyone knows that the CIA killed him. The CIA says they killed him. It's not like some, conspiracy here. Now, people took that as, and it's a psyop in itself, oh, well, look, this is evidence that, he was against the CIA, and the CIA doesn't like what's happening in Cuba, therefore the Cuban Communist government must be good. No, it isn't. Economically, it's horrible. It's morally devoid. They arrest people and imprison people. They do horrible things there. However, again, They create a coup. They create a problem. Why? Because they needed fear surrounding the campaign with the Soviets, who they had just also propped up about 15 years before in World War II against the Nazis. Again, this is a far drawn-out issue that leads to today, but they needed a fear campaign, the Cuban Missile Crisis situation, back in the 60s, which allowed them to use Cuba as a stepping stone for more surveillance and more militarism around the world, and more fear to keep people begging the government to save them from themselves. I mean, it is a clear-cut case of psychological warfare. Now, we see that today with the COVID stuff. We see that today with Iran. Oh, they're putting troops in Hezbollah, training Hezbollah on Margarita Island in Venezuela, which is patently absurd. I've talked to so many people from Venezuela on this hour from that island. I've never seen a Muslim in their life there. I should also mention that when the announcement was made of the invasion of Venezuela, I was hanging out with a bunch of Venezuelans, and they were crying, and people were calling their family members. And I mean, it's not what it appears. Obviously, Venezuelans despise Maduro. This does not mean they want the CIA taking over, similar to Juan Guaido many years ago trying to take over by the hands of the CIA, or Machado. Again, another example of the CIA plant. It is patently obvious that this Latin America push, which I've been reporting on for years, was going to be one of the next big moves. They want to cause, well, first of all, they want to use this next coup. Like, it's ironic that they start Cuba with a coup, which was helped to be run by the CIA, and end it with a coup to create another country, another nation, possibly even become part of the United States, which is a very real possibility, by the way. That they do the same thing in Venezuela. Now they take the oil. Now they're pushing back against China and Russia. Now China, they claim that China is going through a Strait of Hormuz with weapons for Iran. They are creating this world war situation where it's everyone against each other.
Yep.
They're doing it in Mexico with the cartels, where they claim that the cartels are attacking people. Remember, I lived in Puerto Vallarta for 6 years. I literally just left. I was living there where I looked out my window one morning back in February 22nd, where cars were on fire outside my window. And they said, oh, well, they're going to kill everyone. It's insane. The cartel's going to... No, they didn't, and no, they wouldn't. It would hurt them economically. It doesn't make any sense. Also, to claim that Iran is arming and funding the cartels is obviously absurd. The U.S. government, if anyone, is arming and funding the cartels. Also, huge amounts of Israeli weapons found in the hands of cartels. How did that get overseas? Again, this is all part of that psyop. I want to point out here, and I'm going to get into some more Cuban stories right away just to give you guys the headlines of what they're saying, but I do want to make it abundantly clear. Again, Cuba's government, bad. U.S. government, CIA, mass murdering, child trafficking, psychopaths, also bad.
Worse.
It doesn't have to be this way or that way. You don't have to be on this side of it or that side of it. You could just be against statism and the evils of the state and the constant psychological warfare that we're witnessing. Again, Mexico, they said, oh, well, because they have military parades with China and Russia in Monterrey, Mexico sometimes, therefore, they are working with Russia and China. They're building weapons, holding weapons for Russia against the United States. This is stuff that's being claimed under the Trump administration, though it was under the Biden administration as well. It's part of their map to creating that North American Union eventually, because they had that under Peña Nieto, and now they have a kind of a pushback with Mexico, all by design to shift over to the Eastern Bloc, the BRICS nations, with, of course, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and now, like, United Arab Emirates, the list goes on. They're pretty much getting Saudi Arabia in on this, Egypt, all these other countries. It's obvious, okay? I don't want to rant, but context matters. Then they say, oh, well, we have this big problem in Mexico. We have all these people that are killing people. There's all this violence and all this. Most of that violence comes from cartel and cartel violence. It's not from hitting or attacking civilians. The civilians, like in what happened on February 22nd in Puerto Vallarta, which I witnessed for myself. I was going out by myself that night and the next day. No issues, no concerns. There was not a safety concern for everyday civilians because civilians aren't attacked. The cartel makes their money in great ways off of tourism. So if you have, a bunch of civilians dying, that would be a big problem. They did that in Acapulco in 1985. That led to 40 years later people still not wanting to go to Acapulco. So it would be devastating economically for the cartel and for the people there. Also, when they say, oh, well, we're going to go after the cartel, do they realize that, like, every second chef and cook and dishwasher and, store clerk and, gas station attendant works with them? Like, you can't just go after the cartel. It's such an Americanized media propagandized view of what the cartel is, and what they claim is not the reality. So I just wanted to throw that out there as just context with what I personally have witnessed in 6 years living in Mexico. Now, okay, they want a new Iraq, a new Middle East, a new, plan, 7-country plan in Latin America. So they're going after Cuba, they're going after Mexico, they're going after Colombia, they're going after Honduras, they're going after Chile, they're going after, of course, Venezuela, and many other countries in the region, and possibly Brazil. We'll see. Brazil is, in itself, kind of a communist country with Lula. Lula is an absolute scumbag. However, and those elections were totally fake. However, they are part of the BRICS bloc. They're the B in BRICS. So, again, that is part of that idea, and it's all manufactured, of that shift from the West to the East, economic powers shifting this way. The U.S. was heavily involved in creating that opposition in the first place, and it's all, this is why I say it's by design. If you go back to the 1970s, Henry Kissinger meeting with Mao, creating this alliance for trade with the Chinese government and saving them from a famine event, and then the deal moving into the Trilateral Commission with Zbigniew Brzezinski and the Rockefeller Foundation, which weirdly Epstein was a member of both when he was a kid, like no one knew who he was. Strange, right? Intelligence agencies, my friends. They bring the China into the loop of this in order to create a technocratic guinea pig state, a guinea pig state that would eventually morph into what we see today. Now we fast forward, they have social credit, sesame credit back in the early 2010s.
Yep, the model.
They have
the new model, the new world order.
Surveillance. Now the U.S. is doing the same thing. They have social credit in the sense that they're bringing in 5 years of social media history to enter the country. They have a digital currency, X money, connected to X, and which is owned by XAI, which has Pentagon contracts, which Elon Musk says will be the go-to
new
for all financial
stablecoin
means in all industries. Exactly what Larry Fink of BlackRock says as he's pushing for the Panama Canal. And exactly as Mark Carney is saying in his call for a new world order in their deal with China. Mass surveillance in the United States with cameras everywhere with facial recognition. We've gone over this a million times. Digital IDs coming into the frame with bank accounts.
Yep, real ID.
And that was always the idea. Once the empire falls, and they'll make it look like they're fighting back a little bit. That's what the big deal with Trump is, also demoralization and all that. The dominoes all start toppling. And then they come in with the new system, which was already conveniently built. Imagine that. It was already built.
And that's where we are in that new system. Well, Revelation chapter 13 goes into it, right? But you will not be able to buy or sell, save ye that took the implant, the implantable microchip, the micro C-hip. That's pretty much what it's all coming down to, because everything's, you have to have a bank account in order to survive. I went into this before. You have to have a bank account in order to survive. You can't get by on gift cards and cash all the time. You have to have a bank account one way or another. Yeah, you ever tried to buy one of those gift card Visas or MasterCards, and then you want to order something through PayPal, like say off of eBay? Guess what? PayPal ain't going to recognize that gift card. You have to have a real credit card or a bank account, right? In order to even commerce. Now, eBay's a fine example of that, but even with Facebook Marketplace, they deal a lot with PayPal as well, and with Zelle, which is through a real bank account. You can't use those gift cards for that, so you're not going to be able to buy or sell, pretty much, because everything's reliant upon a bank. And the banks, all of them are going to have the implementation, right? You're going to have a chip in order to receive your money. Government checks, they don't send you checks anymore. It's all, you have to have direct deposit, right? So you see where it is. Iran slams terrorist attack, assassination of Shia cleric near Damascus shrine. So like everything else though, yeah, they're still wiping out all, previous installations there, right? Because Iran did have a lot of influence in Syria, but since the Israeli state, Mossad, put in Hayat al-Sham, which is enemies of Hezbollah, by the way, and enemies of Iran, well, they've been able to get rid of it, and they're just, going on onslaught, slaughtering every resilience, every Shia, and every Christian in Syria is being slaughtered, which nobody's really talking about it, right? In a statement on Saturday, Iran Foreign Minister Baghazi expressed deep disgust at the heinous crime on Friday, which led to the assassination of Sheikh Mansar, a member of the Shia sect's scholarly body and a Friday sermon preacher. Baghazi said the acts of terror against religious sites and scholars in Syria, which, as you know, Hayat al-Sham al-Jilani has been wiping everything out with this new government. And other countries in West Asia are part of the sinister plot of the Israeli regime and the United States to sow discord and incite division in the region. And he's absolutely right. He extended his condolences to the family of the martyred cleric as well as the Syrian nation and the community of religious scholars, which without Bashar al-Assad in there, it's pretty much another Israeli state. You may as well say it. Whether Israeli state puts their flag there or not, Damascus belongs to Israeli state. Hayat al-Sham totally works with the Israeli state. Probably even more so than Gomer and all his troops. And there's going to be a fight between there, because the Israeli state is going after Gomer. It's going after Turkey. Israel prepares for return to war against Iran as Trump briefed on potential strikes. Israeli media reported Thursday that the Israeli state is preparing for the possibility of returning to war with Iran as President Trump is considering to restart bombing campaign. Times of Israel reported that Israeli officials believe negotiations between the U.S. and Iran, which have been stalled due to the ongoing U.S. blockade, could totally collapse as early as next week. So they're ready to go. So here we go. Rumor of war, right? Israeli officials made clear they want to return to war with Iran, as Israeli Defense Minister Katz saying last week the Israeli state are waiting for the green light from the U.S. to kill the rest of the Khamenei family and plunge Iran into the age of darkness and stone by destroying energy infrastructure, echoing similar threats made by President Trump. So, this war never really stopped, by the way. They're just, kind of low on ammo and a whole bunch of other things. You're starting to see a little bit of trials to keep the shit show going. Invasion of Cuba, rumor, etc. To keep the eyes off of it. Oh, and don't forget the fake assassination attempt against Trump. Iran military officials warn renewed conflict with U.S. likely. You see, they're preparing. Wake up the mighty men, prepare war. And you're seeing it. Let them come down. Senior Iranian military official warned that renewed conflict with the U.S. is likely. Renewed conflict between the U.S. and Iran is likely, and evidence shown that the U.S. does not adhere to any commitments or agreement. Mohammed Asadi, Deputy Inspector of Military Headquarters, said in a statement carried by the news agency on Saturday, U.S. officials' actions and statements are largely media-oriented, aimed first at preventing a drop in oil prices, and second, because that's all that Trump is a businessman, so of course, he says things to play around with the prices, but that's about it. And a second, at escaping the predicament that they created for themselves, he added. Iranian armed forces are fully in full readiness for any renewed adventurism and miscalculation by the U.S., he added. So, like everything else, though, as you know, that a lot of these Bible Belt states and there's a division in Christianity, because a lot of them are not pushing Israel first, by the way. They're not pushing the Israeli state anymore, and they're starting to break off from that and starting to condemn the actions in the Gaza and a whole bunch of other things, right? And even the Catholic Church has come against Donald Trump and against the Israeli state. So we all know that the Catholic Church really rules most of the other ones, even though they don't say it, they kind of do. So it's breaking off. It's breaking off from the idea that those are the Jews of the Bible, etc. They're not saying that they're bastards or anything like that, but they are breaking off on the idea that you got to support the Israeli state no matter what. They're breaking off from that. So, many U.S. Christians loyal to Israel due to evangelical interpretations of the Bible. And that's just from, the false prophet itself. Because again, you got this division, but nonetheless, though, they're taught to tell you Israel first. You have to support the Israeli state, which has nothing to do with the Israelites. So they call it blind faith. That's what this video is going into, this news report.
Across the American South, support for Israel is often rooted in faith, especially among evangelicals. But the modern state has only existed since 1948, raising questions and concerns
because they're bastards, right?
To today. We've spoken with congregants and pastors to really understand how the views are evolving.
Christians are not monolithic in how we view Israel, okay?
Historically, those views have shifted, sometimes dramatically. In earlier centuries, some Christians blamed Jewish people for the death of Jesus, fueling discrimination and persecution.
There was a
those
time
ain't the Jews.
in the history of the church where Christians blamed Jews for the death of Jesus, and a large percentage of Christians persecuted Jews for that reason, which was horrible. It should never have happened.
At the same time, other Christians see another figure as central to their faith story, the foundation of the Old Testament and the roots of Christianity itself.
So, a much more biblical view of the Jews is to thank them as our forebears in the faith.
Today, many evangelicals still look to those biblical origins when thinking about Israel, tracing the story back to figures like Abraham and the formation of the people of God. But how that translates to the modern state of Israel isn't always agreed upon. Within evangelical communities, there's a range of interpretations, from strong theological support to more nuanced views.
I think most evangelicals still view the people of Israel, even ethnic Judaism, as
as God's chosen people.
Others see that idea differently, emphasizing spiritual identity over national or political boundaries. Still, even among those perspectives, support for Israel's existence as a country remains common.
I personally, and this is me speaking, I'm in favor of the nation of Israel because I have this crazy notion that they have the right to exist.
That support is often rooted not only in theology, but also in modern political and historical realities, including security concerns and long-standing alliances. Looking back before 1948, those differences in belief were already present, shaping how Christians understood Israel long before it became a modern nation. Today, those interpretations continue to evolve, influenced by scripture, history, and a changing political landscape. For many evangelicals, Israel isn't just part of history, but it's part of their faith today.
And that's why you never hear them condemn Zionism, right? That you can't be a Christian and condemn Zionism. So you see how that covering cast is being removed. And a lot of people are denouncing Christianity as a part of it. Oh, yeah. They see Christianity as a part of Zionism. You know? IRGC's Quad Sports chief, Israeli kidnapping of Gaza flotilla, which, as you know, they continue to do that. Anytime anybody wants to send aid there. Activists, international terrorism. Commander of Quad Force Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has condemned the violent interception of the Gaza-bound Global Summit flotilla vessels and detention of pro-Palestinian activists by Israeli terrorists as prime example of international terrorism. Kasani went on to say the activists' endeavors to lift the siege imposed on the oppressed people of Gaza and to rescue Palestinian children and women from the grasp of the Zionists represent the pinnacle of the global struggle against those who perpetrate violence against innocent lives. Iran has always spoke up for the rights of the Palestinians. And Syria used to when it was Bashar al-Assad. You notice that al-Jilani never speaks against it, but Turkey does. Israeli strikes several parts of southern Lebanon. Israeli state launched new attacks against southern Lebanon, claimed to have targeted Hezbollah despite the ceasefire theatrically, and everything's a theater, in place since the 16th of April. Ain't much of a ceasefire. Yeah, I can definitely tell that they have refrained. Fucking, you know it's fucking bullshit. Israeli state carried out terror attacks against southern Lebanon on Saturday with its military claim to have hit dozens of Hezbollah targets. Israeli terror attacks have become regular occurrence despite the ceasefire, which theatrically has been in place since the 16th of April. Yeah, it's all a theater. There ain't no ceasefire, by the way, but theatrically. Oh yeah, there's supposed to be a ceasefire between Iran and the U.S. Bullshit! You know, it's just theater. Make you think. In a statement, the Israeli military struck Hezbollah targets, adding that approximately 70 military structures and approximately 50 Hezbollah infrastructure sites were dismantled across several areas on Saturday. Israeli army ordered residents of 9 villages to leave their homes. So, you know, yep. Because the only acting government is, in fact, Hezbollah. Israeli state continues to destroy Lebanon's south. Locals are turning to Hezbollah. Well, that's the only government you got anyways. The other one's just part of the Israeli state anyways. With the U.S. and Israeli terrorists constantly insisting everything that is happening in southern Lebanon is Hezbollah, there was an underlying assumption that there would be a public backlash against Hezbollah as locals got progressively worse. While there were early reports that people resented Hezbollah's role in the war during the early days, that view seems to be shifting at the destruction continuing to scale. So like everything else, though, they're tired of the Israeli state. They're tired of the Israeli state running Lebanon. They want Hezbollah to reform and get back to the way it was. Occupied by the Israeli state and watching Israeli military bulldozers destroy their homes and villages, many have less and less time to hold Hezbollah responsible, and instead turning to Hezbollah for protection as the only faction that is the way of resisting the ongoing attacks. So like everything else, though, of course, Hezbollah is the only one that will defend them anyways. You can't depend on a government that's totally in bed with the one that's destroying them. Yeah. And like everything else, though, you know, I'd mentioned InfoWars before, you know, because there will be a famine of the word, and you can see what's in place. All prophecy will come to pass. at the end of the famine of the words. So like everything else, I'm going to play this one video before I close this out. And so we'll get into this a little bit, right? Because I believe that's in Amos. Now, is Alex Jones part of the prophets? No, but he's always been kind of the example of, when they go after media, which we know this shit show's been going on with Alex Jones and the InfoWars, but nonetheless, though, Alex Jones is where you got the original bit of information, which we've been saying for a long time, that the implantable microchip is in fact the MOTB at the end of the day, and it was on the Alex Jones show, even though the other guy, William something, I'm trying to remember his name, but nonetheless, but it was in particular that interview on Alex Jones that got a lot of attention, right? That they'd be looking for a guy in a cave but could never find him. And this war would go on forever and ever, but ultimately at the end of the day, they want everybody chipped, and they want all the money and all the power, all of it to be on the chip. Very famous interview came out of Alex Jones, and yet, the InfoWars, etc. Well, the InfoWars is ending with their final broadcast. But Alex Jones, we know he's back, and we'll get into that in the next video, but nonetheless, though, he's back. Now it's just, it's not called Real Alex Jones, but it's just, he's got his own website, etc. But, a time is coming where there won't be alternatives anymore. And we get into this a lot, for years I was just on Odysee, Rumble, and BitChute after having several channels taken down and taken out because, that's medical misinformation, that's misinformation, and all the other shit they've done to the YouTube, I eventually got it back on YouTube, obviously. There's newer avenues, but eventually we're not going to have it. All of it's going to be taken down to. And this is what this is getting into. Everything's leading to that. Just like the MLTB is slowly but surely going to be let out. And then one day the legislature is going to be there. But you have to have an implantable micro chip. But we're not going to be able to teach that forever. But you will have gotten the word by the time they take this down. Amos chapter 8, verse 11, it reads, Behold, the days come, saith the Most High Yahweh, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. They shall wander from sea to sea, from the north even to the east. They shall run to and fro, seek the word of the Most High Yahweh, and shall not find it. Meaning that they'll be looking for us on the streets, but we won't be teaching there anymore. In that day shall the fair virgins and young men faint for thirst. Meaning that, okay, you don't know shit. You don't have any guidance anymore because we're not there to guide you. That's all coming. And so you can see that, okay, it begins with Alex Jones being, as an example. He's always been the example. Because he's the one that told you, about, that had it on his show about what they plan to do, Because this guy, I'm trying to remember his name, but nonetheless, though, his famous interview, he said that they ultimately want everybody chipped and the money to be on the chips, and that's where everything's going. We ain't going to be able to warn you anymore. And those other groups, they ain't going to teach you that anymore. Sure, they'll be on the internet. They'll be teaching, the mark of the beast is sin. The mark of the beast is Christianity. The mark of the beast is an embargo. They'll be able to teach that, but the real truth will not be there anymore. So hopefully this has been edifying. For them will say, Brak of the Yahweh, Brak of the Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadosh, Wa Abal Babal, and Brakatum Jehovah Lek, Shalom.
So, end of an era, InfoWars goes off the air.
And all glory goes to Jesus Christ, our Heavenly Father, and these guys that direct us. We commit ourselves to God in this holy fight, and we are committed, and if God stands with us, who can stand against us? And that's how I close out. So I salute you all. What a crew. The hell we've been through has only made us stronger. Let me ask you, would you have it any other way? No. Are you not stronger now in this fight? Yeah! I salute this crew and all the viewers and listeners to this fight, and I commit myself to Jesus Christ's hands.
Amen. God bless the InfoWar! Woo!
You are the InfoWar. It lives forever. We're going to play Frank Sinatra Blue Eyes and come back with the great Tom Rans and then Jay Dyer to close this out. God bless you all. That's it. The next phase starts. The real war begins now.
So, Kurt, what do you make of this?
He did not volunteer. Oh, you know, Tim Heidecker's going to take over and pretend to get the guy, Will Sasser, pretend to be Alex, but that creep Ben Collins.
They're going to make.
Remember InfoWars got. Remember I told you it wasn't out of the woods yet, this court thing?
I thought it was the Onion that bought it.
But yeah, the Onion is Ben Collins, NBC's disinfo guy. He bought the Onion.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, Collins is a converso name from Cohen, by the way. Fun fact. Ben Collins, who now you're not going to believe me when I say this, and I understand how crazy that is. That guy is straight apparently, and he's married to a woman, and he bought it. You know what's going on? He probably ain't that straight. Anyway, so you know the Onion, I'll see pop up on my YouTube feed, like, wow, they don't have nobody good working there, or the people they got are under constraints where they can't make jokes about real shit, so it's very unfunny. It's very like, you know, like Work Friend accidentally becomes Real Friend was the headline I saw yesterday. And he wanted to buy InfoWars to mock it, which Alex Jones is InfoWars. InfoWars doesn't matter without Alex Jones.
So correct. It's like TPUSA without Charlie Kirk. It doesn't matter.
Hey, if you get a great impression of Alex and you do his own show, with a guy pretending to be him as a joke, I can tell you straight up, it's not going to work on any level. Colbert Report wasn't they bought Sean Hannity and kicked him off and put Steve in there. Oh, I'm going to be a fake Sean Hannity. They made their own separate thing. That's why it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Okay? So these people fundamentally don't get funny. And let me tell you something Alex is dead right about. I think he's dead right. Because he goes, Tim Heidegger was a Satanist. Yeah, I think he is. Because I know Zabrowski, who I met at Doug Pound's party.
Who's Zabrowski?
Zabrowski's a very funny guy. Open Satanist. And when I say open Satanist, I don't mean like, you know, he's an atheist.
So he dropped the truth bomb.
They're into that shit. Real weird. So no, I don't think Alex is wrong about that. Because if you ever met Tim Heidegger, even if that guy doesn't worship Satan, he does. Like if you ever met him, he's a piece of shit. One of the worst people I've ever bumped into where I liked their work and I knew they were going to be shitty at me because I liked a thing they did. And of course,
I don't want any trouble.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think the uglier one, the one that's like, I think he's like the nicer one, but I never met him.
So Alex Jones, we know what happened. He pushed the Sandy Hook, that it was a false flag, and he lost by default in Connecticut and Texas courts due to repeated failures to comply with discovery, turning over evidence. Juries awarded a $1.5 billion total in damages. Jones later conceded on the stand that the shooting was 100% real. $1.5 billion. Alex didn't kill anyone. He didn't shoot anyone. He didn't assault anyone.
Is that amazing? And it's kind of Paul. Was that? Did they have $1 billion?
Where's
the Sandy Hook?
Yeah. What about? Yeah, right. Where's the
Chevron? That's the only thing I can think of.
Where's the damages for East Palestine, Ohio? Where's the damages for the COVID? The fake the lockdowns that weren't necessary, the lies about where's Fauci? Nobody gets, anyway, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected his appeals in 2025, leaving the judgment intact. Bankruptcy and liquidation process. Jones filed for bankruptcy in 2022. A court-appointed trustee and later a Texas state receiver took control of his assets to pay his creditors, primarily the Sandy Hook families. In 24, the trustee planned to shut down and sell InfoWars to help satisfy the debts. The satirical site The Onion won a bankruptcy auction for the assets and planned to turn it into a parody operation with proceeds going towards the judgments. Multiple court battles followed, including rejections and appeals. As of late early May, around the time of this is all from Grok. A Texas receiver stopped paying the rent and the internet and satellite and other studio bills in Austin. That's why he has to go off the air. This forced the final InfoWars broadcast. The Onion's latest licensing takeover deal was paused by a Texas appeals court. A hearing is set for May 28th. The situation remains in legal limbo.
So what did I say? That he's not out of the woods with his thing yet. That's why I'm imagining. And then, good for him, going, oh, this is ridiculous, finally. Good for him. But that's why I thought that, because now it got taken away. Who cares about InfoWars? Just be the guy telling the truth all the time, but follow you wherever, man.
Yeah, so it says here, Jones has said he will continue via a new Alex Jones network, a different studio.
And that's out already.
Real Alex Jones, and Telegram and apps and other platforms. He frames this as lawfare to silence him rather than genuine debt collection. So, yeah, he's just going to go start a new thing.
It's to silence all of us, while shit-lib imbeciles whine about Jimmy Kimmel might not be on.
I know. Come see me May 23rd in Atlanta.